Glad to see you on our channel. We hope that this video will be interesting. The U.S. first arrangement for retribution on China got known, catastrophe is conceivable. Following the topic of Chinese blame in the coronavirus pestilence started to overwhelm American political talk, we anticipated this would end with U.S. sanctions against the PRC, and this is the situation that is being set up by senior legislators and congressmen of the Republican Party of the United States. The bill, which will offer the president the chance to force sanctions against China for the COVID-19 pestilence, and this bill gets each opportunity of being affirmed in the two places of the American Parliament. A particular distribution, the Hill, explains the Jesuit wording of what precisely the United States is going to rebuff China. Republican legislators presented a bill on Tuesday permitting President Trump to endorse China for declining to participate in examining the source of the coronavirus. Bill of Responsibility for COVID-19, presented by Senator Lindsey Graham, will approve Trump to apply sanctions against China if the nation doesn't team up with examinations by the United States, partners of the United States or associations working under the sponsorship of the United Nations. China is attempting to place in a sad circumstance. As per the arrangement of the creators of the authorization charge, official Beijing must pick between enormous national mortification as acknowledgement that the United States has the option to explore the activities of the Chinese specialists, and dynamic participation with American agents and examiners of American satellite nations, up to some Estonia, and the conservation of national respect, which will promptly be utilized to force approvals and articulations that, since Beijing won't embarrass itself before American examiners, it's certainly concealing reality. Incidentally, reality itself isn't at all important to the creators of authorizations, similarly as they were not keen on reality with regards to their endeavors to present shocking approvals against Russia. For instance, unmistakable Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is both the creator of a few enemy of Russian bills and the primary advocate of a sense against China, and expecting that a similar standard is utilized in the two cases, Beijing gets no opportunity of staying away from sanctions. The main thing that Chinese tact can rely on is to persuade, with immediate and circuitous dangers, the Trump organization that impressive the most rigid authorizations is an impractical notion, that is, you can depend on the way that, as on account of Russia, Washington will attempt to apply all measures, except for those that will make genuine harm the American economy itself. It is huge that the Republican legislators are not covering up. The fundamental motivation behind their bill is to debilitate the primary component of the PRC political and managerial framework in the individual of the Chinese Communist Party. An official proclamation by one of the creators of the bill leaves no uncertainty about this, the progressing concealment of reality by the Chinese Communist Party with regards to a flare-up of coronavirus can't go unnoticed. This law will approve the president to make suitable move against the Chinese government to stay away from a comparative episode later on. It is additionally important that, as on account of hostile to Russian endorses, it's not so much about extending the U.S. president's international strategy arms stockpile, as columnists are attempting to envision, yet about really pushing Trump to force authorizes on another structure. As indicated by the bill, following its entrance into power, the president turns on the counter, and following 60 days he should either announce to the U.S. Congress that China has made every single imaginable concession, counting the arrival of political detainees, or, on the other hand, pronounce to Congress that China has not collapsed. Despite the way that the bill doesn't require the president to fundamentally force sanctions, from the picture perspective the president will have no other decision, and if sanctions are presented, the bill obliges him to pick in any event two measures from a pre-arranged rundown. The rundown incorporates measures, for example, freezing resources on some Chinese authorities, a prohibition on movement and visa repudiation for some Chinese authorities, a restriction on giving understudy visas to Chinese residents, a prohibition on any money-related organization in the United States from giving credits or advancing arrangement of protections of Chinese organizations or organizations constrained by the People's Republic of China, guiding American representatives to cast a ballot against the allotment of assets from the IMF and the World Bank to Chinese structures, and a restriction on posting on American trades of Chinese organizations or organizations with Chinese co-proprietors. It is anything but difficult to see that the most forceful authorizations proposed by the U.S. president are duplicates of appalling assents against Russia or analogues of approvals that have just been presented against some Russian organizations. Individual assents against explicit Chinese authorities or specialists are probably not going to establish any genuine connection with legitimate Beijing, yet the restriction on American banks loaning to Chinese organizations and the real obstructing of access of Chinese organizations, and even organizations with Chinese cooperation, to the U.S. Securities Exchange through which works a huge piece of the worldwide speculation network, are as of now applications to cause very substantial, however a long way from deadly, on driving Chinese organizations economic harm. The bill doesn't make reference to such a famous technique among the Republicans for vengeance on China as defaulting on U.S. bonds held by the PRC and its outside trade saves, yet this is more probable not an indication of restriction of the creators of the bill. However, a specialized inconvenience, a default of this sort is precluded by the U.S. Constitution, and for that to get around this confinement, you need time and imaginative lawmaking. Also, the approvals set from the bill being talked about is as of now very adequate to release an extremely sharp clash among Washington and Beijing. According to the response of the Chinese side to late enemy of Beijing bills, including a bill that will permit U.S. courts to consider claims against the PRC government so as to recuperate remuneration for the pandemic, certain unsavory results anticipate the creators of the bills. As one of the specialists met by the state-possessed outside undertakings distribution Global Times underlines, we can't simply convey an emblematic retaliatory strike, however we should utilize countermeasures that can cause them to feel torment. According to the recommendations that show up in the Global Times, the quintessence of the reaction is to rebuff those states whose agents in Congress and the Senate are advancing enemy of Chinese authorizes by denying Chinese speculation, and losing existing employments with Chinese cash. This may end up being a viable methodology, particularly with regards to the financial emergency brought about by the plague, yet it is as yet hard to dispose of the inclination this is a brief measure. Sometime, the U.S. president himself will begin advancing and forcing sanctions, and afterward you should figure out how to hurt the whole presidential organization and all voters, which implies that releasing an all-out approvals war is simply an issue of time and how rapidly each side time to adequately plan for it. American legislators most likely accept that against the scenery of the monetary emergency, nobody will see extra issues brought about by a total or halfway burst of creation and money-related ties with China. However, this is a mistaken desire. Washington is accustomed to considering itself the focal point of the universe and seeing the pronouncements of the U.S. president as a sort of enchantment wand, yet the issue is that the approvals strategy has a genuine confinement. The U.S. president can force sanctions against China, Russia or Mars. Be that as it may, on account of a retaliatory Chinese ban, for instance, on essential prescriptions, which the U.S. has just overlooked how to deliver, the United States will have issues for which the Washington political world class is unmistakably not prepared at this point. If you liked the video or it was just interesting, like and subscribe to the channel.